Well, hi there on YouTube. Today a little review of this knife, the CRKT Directive, or as some call this company, CRKT Directive. It's easier to say, but of course the name of the company is CRKT. As you can see, I have laid out a few, I don't know if you know them, but it's a few CRKT knives, just to tell you that I have a few that vary a great deal in quality. And they made one of my all-time favorite knives, Hood Manny, which I really love. This is such a nice knife. I really enjoy this so tremendously. Smooth and fit in every single way. The Shenanigan I reviewed, not the best knife. I'm not that satisfied with it, and that's, I guess, is what sort of characterizes CRKT, that some nice, some bad, not always the best quality control. CRKT Directive, which is the newest one in addition in my collection, and show you the good and not least the ugly of this one. I usually start at the blade, and I'll do that today as well. We have a drop point blade, a black coating, which is actually very strong. I can see that I have taken it apart, and it is even inside the pivot, and it doesn't wear very much even there, where it is mechanically challenged all the time, but it really seems to be a strong coat. Still looking at the blade, finger choil, and a very large finger choil at that. It could have been recessed some more into the corner of the knife here, or corner of the scale, but it's very far distance out, which leaves a lot less blade. On top of the blade, some jimping. I would call it a bit tactical looking, not very practical. It doesn't give that much resistance or grip. But it's looking at the scales, the handle, we see the backside of the pivot with a bit of pattern in it, and we have carved out some patterns here, and the handle is nylon. Further down, there's place for the pocket clip, and strangely they filled out these holes, but not these holes, and on the back side not here, but of course there's the pocket clip to fill out the holes here. Seems a bit strange, but when I took it apart I realized that they probably had to put this filling here, because otherwise the scale would be flapping. I think that's the reason why they put it there, and then they sort of neglected to put it in here. It's a liner lock, and it locks up about, yeah, it's a black knife. I'll try to get a flashlight here. Lock up roughly about 60%. I have to tell you that out of the box, as those of you who's watched my first impressions video know, this had extremely much, what do you call it, lock stick. And with that I'll go to fit and finish. Oh no, we can just look at the pocket clip, a small pocket clip, not very deep carry, and this very big lanyard hole in the back, just an ordinary screw for the pivot. No big deal, that's okay for me. Fit and finish. Well, everything as I told you, this jimping up here is not very functional. It doesn't provide that much grip. Actually, it's quite a bit better here at the end and on the back side of the knife. As I said, quite a lot of lock stick, and as you can't hear it anymore, but I actually had to polish this lock a bit at the end to make it a little less sticky. Everything is nicely rounded off and chamfered. No really sharp corners anywhere. So all in all, that's quite good. Ergonomically, it fits quite nicely in my hand anyway. And even if you choke up, you have a good grip. And the reverse cut, quite nice as well. Doesn't seem to be that many hot spots, but actually this jimping down here just a little bit, and that's quite nice as well. And you might even use it in the kitchen this way, which feels quite alright as well. Now, action. Well, again, I have to refer you to my first impressions video. This one was very stiff, nearly impossible to open, and it has a very strong detent, and this flipper just ate away on my finger. I learned that you have to mainly use light switching when you open it, and then I put a ton of lubrication inside it, and as you can see, it's getting a bit better. Which is also because I had to loosen up the pivot. But when I loosened up the pivot, I introduced, and I don't know if you can see it, I introduced some blade play. And that made me look, now we're a little bit back at fit and finish. If we look inside the knife, I don't know if you can see it with the flashlight. If you look inside the knife, we have some very small and very thick liners. I'll just try to make it focus, and then which makes which does that there's not much surface holding this knife in the pivot, this blade. Actually, I think I'll take it apart and then I'll show you, because I think all the ugly actually starts inside this pivot. I'm not used to taking knives apart on video, but I'll try to do my best, and I'll try to talk you through it. I have my, this is size 8 and size 6 pivot screws. So I'll try be a bit Nick Shabazz-like today and see if I can take this apart in a hurry so you don't get too bored. Maybe I should put some paper here, then you might be able to see it. And now we have an exploding knife. This is the stop pin, and yeah, I know it's very lubricated, but that's the only way to get it to function reasonably. Now, this is the pivot. very small, very thick. I'll just take a bit of this off. And now comes the really ugly. If we take this blade and put it on the pivot, we have like several millimeters of play between the pivot and the hole in the blade. I don't know if it's that obvious to you, but this is not very, I'll just try to check it out. This is not very stable. This I can move it, I can nearly stir around inside this. Yeah, just telling you, this hole is several sizes bigger than the pivot pin, which is kind of ugly to me. And how the hell are they figuring that this would be a stable design? So so we have small, thick washers that doesn't provide very much grip in the blade. We have a big hole in the blade, that just makes the blade wobble all around the place. Well, I guess that's a recipe for disaster. No need to lubricate this anymore. I put a lot of lubrication on the detent, where the detent follows the blade, and in the hole, just to make it a bit more smooth, because this lock bar is tight as, but then again, the lock bar is apparently the only thing holding the knife stable, so I guess it has to be rather strong. I'll just, well, might put the stop pin in again. So we're nearly there. Just have to tighten the pivot a bit. And well, I tightened it. Yeah. Still, just take this away. Still a bit of blade play. If I tighten it as much as I can so that there's no blade play. Still a little bit, but then it's tight as fuck. So I'll try to loosen it a bit so that the action works. Oh, that was a bit too much. Has to be fair here. The centering is actually okay now. And blade play. So tighten it so that there's no blade play, it won't function whatsoever, and loosen it up and you get blade play. This is simply not that stable inside in the pivot mechanism, and this, no matter what you use your knife for, this instability can't be good. So I'll just have to say I am disappointed. I paid almost as much as for this one, which is a gem in my collection. I love this knife so much, and I can get, let me find a good example, like a rake knife, the Fang, which is considerably cheaper, which has an amazing action, and which no blade play, no nothing. I can even, if I could find it, I could even show you a Chinese knife at $15 that is better than this one, and this one is around 55-60 euro, maybe a little bit cheaper in the US, but 55-60 euro. I won't call it a piece of crap, but I'm this close because it's got a lot of ugly in that pivot area. Well, definitely not recommended. Now with this, and it turned out to be a little bit of a long video, but with this I'll wish you a good day, evening, whatever it is in your country. Bye bye.